To today's pen tool tutorial. We're going to open up an Illustrator document, and if you check it out, every time you go to open a new Illustrator document, there's all these awesome tutorials from Adobe. So you don't have to just rely on old crusty dusty lemon. You can learn the new cool hipster things on there. But we're going to just create a new document for you to practice on. It's going to be letter sized. You don't have to name it. I'm going to call mine Pen Tool Intro. I mean, if you want to use the same document for your tutorial, you can name it tutorial, whatever it is, 4, I guess. It's tutorial 4. Okay, so I'm just going to use those same default settings that we've been using. A letter size document, 8.5 by 11, CMYK color, high res, preview mode, etc. Create, bing bang boom. Make my window bigger. Application frame. That means it's just as big as it can be on the window, in case you haven't used that before. I'm going to go back to my default Essentials Classic, which should be familiar to you with the tools and such. And oh my. Anyway, okay. So Essentials Classic, and the tool that we're talking about today is ye old pen tool. Key command P for pen, easy peasy. Ooh, there's the new curvature tool, which helps you use the pen tool. That's fancy. But for now, we're just going to talk about the pen tool. And notice whenever there's a little triangle in the corner of the tool, that means there's a flyout menu or a drop-down menu or options. So if we click and hold on the pen tool, you'll see that there's the pen tool, the add anchor point tool, the delete anchor point tool, and the anchor point tool. This used to be called the, what did it be called? Like the shift, curve, I don't know, something, corner shift tool or something. Anyway, anchor point, that's easy. Editing the anchor point, that's what you do with that. But for now, we're just going to start with straight on, straight up, regular old P for pen. There are some things to be aware of. Let's see if I can change my preferences view, because if I make my cursor really gigantic, hang on for a second. There's a way to do that. You too can make your cursor gigantic if you want to zoom into and where's my pointer control? Speed. Oh, I'm so sorry. There's a thing. Display cursor, there it is. Oh, I can make my cursor size gigantic, and look at how big it is. Oh my god, I don't think I want it that big. Okay, like that big. Also, notice that there's one of the presets in your accessibility tools. This is an overall systems preference thing, so it works in all your applications. If you lose your little cursor ever, you probably know this, but you can shake your mouse. If you go like this, it will get big and you can find it again. Anyway, that's helpful sometimes. We all lose our mouses, our mice sometimes. Wow, that is a big cursor. This is helpful though for the pen tool. So what I wanted to show you is that when you start off and you haven't made any marks yet, you haven't used your pen tool, it's got an asterisk, which means that it's like ready to go. As soon as I click a pen, now the asterisk disappears because I'm dragging out my line. So the pen tool is a lot of clicking and dragging. So instead of drawing a straight line by holding down all the way across, I just click at the beginning and I click at the end, bing, bang, boom, and I have a straight line. And then it's sort of like it's stuck to your pen. You're like, how do I get off of there? Ew, get away. If you hit return, it becomes unstuck. And then you get that new asterisk symbol again. You also are going to learn how to read these anchor points. So when we work with the pen tool, we make two things. We make anchor points and we make line segments. For now, I have my fill tool is set to, I'm going to set it to null. no fill and a black stroke so that we can just create a line and see it. It's pretty helpful when you're using the pen tool. Some people like to set their stroke to red or something so that it really shows up. If they're just creating their initial artwork, that's fine too. But you get all these nice little readout signs. So when you watch the cursor indicators. So here you can see that even though I ended that path is not closed. So there's an open anchor point at the end. And the final anchor point is selected already. If I deselect everything, yeah. If I deselect everything, I just went back and clicked elsewhere with my selection tool. All the anchor points disappear, you just have the line. If I want to see the anchor points again, I go on my direct selection tool and I click anywhere on my path, and then I can see all the little anchor points. And it helps if I want to edit them, so I can drag them around. So you're going to want to do this. Everything that I'm doing in this video, you should either be doing at the same time or you should come back later and do it, just so that you get some hands-on feeling of reading and looking at these different little symbols. So right now I've got an open path, and the difference between an open path and a closed path is important. It can be tricky because if I had been filling this shape with a color, notice that even though it's an open path, the color is still automatically closing. It will already, the color will extend as if there's a line from the two open ends of your path. There'll be like an invisible line connecting them. There's no line segment there. This gets really important later. You can get really mixed up if you're trying to color entire closed paths and keep them as shapes. It's not a shape unless the whole path is enclosed. Right now it's just a line with some like yellow water filling it up that could spill out here. Big disaster. Okay, and the other helpful thing when you're working with the pen tool, if you get lost and confused, I might have talked to you about this before, is to go up in your view and view it as an outline. This it turns your whole screen into black and white. It lets you see very clearly what's a shape and what's a line. When you're in preview mode, so for example, in preview mode, if I was looking at these two things in preview mode, you wouldn't be able to tell that this thing is an open solid shape unless you look at it in outline mode, and then you can see the lines that everything is made of. So when I grade your assignments, that's how I can tell if you've done things like use the Pathfinder tool and subtracted some lines, or if you've got all kinds of crazy like dot shapes and lines that are out here that are invisible that you didn't know were there. You can really clean up your file and keep it clean and organized by looking at it in outline view. But preview view is like, the way that you want it to look when your project is finished. Okay, so back to the pen tool. So if I'm in my pen tool here and I hover over an open endpoint, it will show a little line there next to the pool and be like, hey, do you want to grab onto that? You want to continue your line from there? You want to make a line? You want to make a line? So sure, I'll make a line there, click, and then I'll make a line here. And when I connect to my other endpoint, if I tried to go out here, if I just made a point, nothing happens. It lets me know that I can edit my corner. But if I go and join back up with the first point, if I make a closed shape, it goes, oh, perfect, you made a shape, it's a closed shape, thank you. And it lets you know, then you're finished. Then you don't have to hit return or deselect or anything to get out of your pen tool. It's ready for the next job. I just did that unconsciously, but the next job that we're going to do, get rid of this. So that's straight lines, and you can make a lot of stuff with straight lines. Here's a confession. Old Lemon was an Illustrator avoider for a long time. I worked in InDesign and Photoshop so much in my job. I didn't really use Illustrator in my job, and so I didn't really grasp what it was, and I avoided using the pen tool because I couldn't figure it out. It wasn't as easy, okay? You had to buy a book back in the day. They didn't have YouTube, okay? And I don't know. Nobody showed me, and I just didn't know. So when I got familiar with the pen tool, I was like, oh my heavens above, this is so great and easy. But the first thing that I did was just try to make my way around shapes. Like, here's my Valentine's heart for you. I'm just going to make it with straight lines because the curves are too confusing. So you can really get pretty far by faking it with straight lines, but you're not going to have to do that because you're going to know how to make curves. Oh, the other thing is with the pen tool, the nice thing about it is there's never a mistake with a pen tool because everything is changeable. If you want to ever change the placement of your points, or you want to change the placement of your lines or the curvature of the sides, which we'll get to in a minute, you just go into the direct selection tool. Remember, that's the one that selects points. The key command is A on your keyboard, and I can grab this point and move it around. I can grab this line segment and move it around. So if I want just to drag that bar that connects them, so whatever I click on, whether it's a segment of a line or the anchor point, I can change. And also I can easily add and subtract anchor points by going to my pen tool. Remember, there's that add anchor point and delete anchor point. And the easy thing about this is, if you're like, I need a point in the middle of that line, it will always let you know when you're on top of the path. Right, you can see it's a little X in front of the pen tool. You'd think that the cursor sign would change. But anyway, if you're on the path, boom, you could add a new anchor point. I could add a new anchor point. Oh yeah, if you're off the path, it'll say, no, you've got to do it on a segment of a path. Okay, that's what happens. So, and helpfully, the key command for that, which I hardly ever go over here and fly out my pen tool menu, because the key command is so simple. It's plus, if I'm in here, it's plus to add a point, and guess what it is to take away a point? Go ahead, guess. Everybody say it out loud. Right. Minus. Your minus symbol on your keyboard subtracts points. So again, if I click on any anchor point, it will subtract it. And if I click on the line, it'll be like, no, you can't subtract the line. You can subtract the points with the anchor point minus tool. Guess what though? Go back to my A. If I want to subtract a line, I can select it with my anchor point and just delete it. Oops. Even if it's in the middle here, like I select that path and delete it. I don't know how I know. How can you see whether it's selected or not? I guess it just my smart guides tell me. You'd think it would give you more of an indication. And then remember, if you use the big selection tool, the solid one, and you grab anything, you're going to grab the whole shape. You're not going to be able to do anything to any individual points or lines. So the little selection tool, the hollow one, the direct one, I don't know why I call him little. He selects littler things. He selects the anchor points and the lines. And so the upshot of that is that, if you're drawing away, you're drawing your heart shape and you don't like the placement of anything. Oops, I was not in my pen tool. P for pen. If you're drawing away and you're like, oh God, I went over there by mistake. Oops. Oh, I don't like the way that is. You don't have to delete the whole thing. Oop. Oh God. See, I let go. Once again, that also is easy to fix. But you don't have to be like, oh, I screwed it up. I'm going to delete the whole thing, or I'm going to delete all the paths back. No. You can just go with your little delete anchor point. And here's the other thing. You don't even have to do any of those key commands, because if you hover over a point, it will ask you if you want to delete it. Yes. Click on it. And if you hover over the middle of a line, it'll ask you if you want to add a point. Yes. So it's like a mind reader. It's like delete one, you have to watch that too. Sometimes you're just checking them and you're like, oh, I want to do something. I want to move this path or this point, thinking that you're in the direct selection tool. You're like, I want to edit that point. I like that crazy line out there. And if you're hovering over it with just your old pen tool, when you click on that point, it goes away. So adding, subtracting. So asterisk means you're good to go from the get-go. A minus means you're going to delete something. A plus means you're going to add something. And an O means you have closed your shape. Got it? Got it. Ready to move on? Ready to move on. All right, curvy lines. This is the fun and crazy part. This is where we get into these kooky wacky Illustrator handles. Right now we've just talked about points and lines. The third component of the pen tool are the wonderful dynamic handles that create curves. These are the Bezier curves from that guy, Mr. Bezier. So the difference between creating straight-sided objects, all I do is click. When I want a curve, I click and I hold down my mouse and drag. So it depends on whether you're using a pen tool, a trackpad, or a mouse, but you're clicking and dragging without letting up in the middle. You drag. And what happens is you get 1 point there. I just made 1 point with 2 handles on it, and then my line is still being connected to my pen. I still have the opportunity to make the next point. And notice when I clicked and dragged, I dragged up, and that's the way my line wants to go, is up. So I'm going to click and drag again. This time I'm going to drag over here, and sure enough, the line wants to go over there. Even if I place my next point way down here, the line starts off in the direction of the drag handle. So just practice click, drag, click, drag, click, drag, and make a nice fun blobby wobby dibbly dobby shape. You can create the blob that came from outer space and then connect it at the end. And chances are, like me, you've got this beautiful curved line everywhere, except when you connect that last endpoint, you're like, why did that not connect? I couldn't connect and click and drag at the same time, so I've got this one place where I've got a square corner. So notice that nowhere else on my shape is there anything resembling a straight square pointy point, except for that very last thing. And once again, with Illustrator, you literally cannot make a mistake, because everything that you created in that shape is completely and fully editable after the fact. So it's very common for me when I'm trying to draw something, like say I was trying to draw I don't know what this was, a duck, a dragon, and that's all I managed the first time. No worries, because infinitely I can go in there, first of all, with my anchor direct selection tool, you know, my little anchor point. I guess A for anchor point. That's how we remember. I don't know. My direct selection tool, remember, he can move around any anchor points. If I want to make the top of the duck's head, let's see if I can. So I can just shift things around till they're more or less in this neighborhood that I want them to be. Oh, look at this. This is when you get your hula hoop, your jump rope gets tangled up. That's where people get crazy with the pen tool. We'll talk about that when you get your streams crossed. So I can move the points around just like I could before, but also notice that every time I click on a point, it gives me the handle symbols for that point, and it gives me the handles for both lines segments that are connected to it. It only gives me one. It doesn't select all of the handles from the whole object. I can do that if I want, but it only lets me edit one little handle thing at a time. So I can also play with the curves with the handles, and what you notice is I guess there's about 180 degrees, if that math, a half a circle. Don't think about it. Don't think about the math. Anyway, I can move the handles around for a while, but if I go too far, I get that loop. I get tangled in a knot. That's the situation that you want to avoid, because things can get really confusing, especially if you have an open line and you've got one of those loops in it. So we try to never have that occur. If you want to make that shape, I can show you how to do that, but because you're sort of things are going inside out and sideways when you have that. And notice also that you can edit when you pull on one handle. It doesn't necessarily affect the other handle, but when you rotate them, they both always stay as straight arms, right? Their arms are stuck out straight to the side together initially, but you can change the length of them, which affects the curve of that side. So between editing both of the handles on either side of a line segment, I can create the kind of a hill in between that I want, the hill or the valley. I can make it a hill or I can make it a valley. So play with that a little bit, in and out. And then the other crazy way to edit, let's look at this corner here. If you notice this corner, when I came around and I connected my path, he's a one-armed bandit. He only has one arm. So his one edge is straight no matter what. It's always going to be a straight corner. I can affect that by the handle that was at the beginning of that line segment, but there's no handle for the end. So this guy is a little, I don't know, I would say he's differently abled because he only has one arm. But what's our motto? Our motto is there are no mistakes in Illustrator because everything is changeable. So if I wanted to add another arm to that fellow, this is where that last anchor point tool, Shift C, a little V, what did it used to be called? It had a different name. Anyway, it was like the anchor shift tool. I don't know. Anyway, what it does is whichever situation you have in your anchor point, right? Like right now, I've got two handles and they're opposite each other. If I want to get rid of them and I make that rounded point into a corner point, I hold down my Shift C, I get that, or I go to the flyout menu. I just click on that anchor point and it resets. So if I want to Shift C, click, and then I can drag, I let up off after I clicked. I clicked, and now you can see it converted. It changed, poof, it did away with the handles. If I click on here again, poof, no more handles. So if I want to make all those corners straight, I could just go around and change all of my curves to squares. And you guessed it, other way around. If you want to change your square to a curve, same thing. I've got this little V shape here now. If I click on that guy and drag, you have to drag on this. I guess if you just click it, no, that doesn't do anything. If you click and drag, you've got restored your anchor, your handle situation. And again, make sure that you don't get in a loop-de-doop like that. You don't want to cut off the circulation to your toes or whatever, to your animal's head, so don't cross him up. But when I'm in that V shape, not to be confused with the direct selection tool that looks like that, the Shift C anchor point edit tool is actually an upside down V. All right, then you're like, but Professor Lemon, what about that guy with the one handle? What about him? Well, same thing. If I go on there, I can get rid of that one handle situation. Or the very last thing you need to know is if I option click on any point, if I option click, it will detach. Oh, I'm sorry. I have to option on the handles. I got to option drag on the handles. Okay. If I option click on my handles or option drag, let's see if I just option click on the path. Now can I go in and drag that guy? No, I have to option click on the handle. If I, I got option drag. Okay, option drag. I just was doing some experiments because sometimes my hands do the things automatically and I have to think about what it is that I'm actually doing. Option dragging, not option clicking. Anytime you want to make the two handles not be parallel in one straight line, like outstretched arms, now these guys can make even more complicated corners. You can make a pointy corner that way, and you can make a pointy corner in the other direction like that. So if you if you want to get into, like, I guess it's kind of like, I don't know, more complex curves. This does not become just a straight curve. Like this handle, when the arms are straight out, you get a smooth curve. When the arms are movable and not straight, you get the option of connecting like a pointy corner. If I go back and just approximately make them straight, I can recover that smoothness. But there still might be a little bump in there, so if I really want to smooth out, instead of just sort of faking it, I'd have to do that Shift C thing again, go to that corner and drag drag both handles out to really make sure that it's smooth. When they're connected, you get a perfectly smooth curve. Is that too confusing? I don't know. It takes some practice so that you mentally know corners are clicks, round shapes are drags. Basically, that's the difference. Clicking with the pen tool makes a corner. Clicking and dragging makes a curve. And then whichever way you went, you can always undo. You can undo with the Shift C. You can undo with Option dragging on a handle. I always like to think of, if Option drag gives me the option to choose one side of the curve at a time. Does that make sense? So I will put supers on the screen. There's the pen tool itself, P. You get this. There's the pen tool, add a point, plus. There's a pen tool, minus a point, negative. There's the Shift C, convert the corner point to a different shape. And then there's the Option drag, which is back in direct selection mode. Option drag lets me edit my handles. Okay, that's the basic controls. And what I'd like you to do is have some fun by practicing and drawing some kind of squiggly things. Try to do a combination. There's a click and drag, and then there's also, if you're in the middle of your shape, you can, as you're creating it, you can choose click and drag makes a curved corner. Click stops. If you just click without dragging, that stops the curve, and your next line segment is going to be straight. If you click and drag again, so you can get a combination of straight and curve while you're drawing, with the clicking and dragging and the clicking and dragging, and then just the clicking. Also, a little helpful tip, if I want to just stop where I am, if I don't want to close things or I want to stop and regroup, I can go back to my most recent anchor point. If I click on it again, now I'm ready to go again, and I can choose dragging. I guess that makes it a square corner by default. So if I want to get out of my curve and go back and make it square, I go back and click on the anchor point. Now I'm square again. So just play around, see how it feels. If you're having a hard time with the concepts, go back, watch this again, or watch any one of those Illustrator pen tool intros from Adobe. Maybe they're explaining it in a different way that you can get. And this is a good place to pause. But I'm just going to go rolling on in to your next tutorial exercise, which I think is a little bit fun. So after you've practiced and gotten the gist, if you sussed it out and you got a rough approximation of a clue of how this works, what you're going to turn in is one document that has two things placed and traced. You're going to place your straight edged, this little straight drawings. Where did I go? Oh, there they are. Pen tool. So there's an element called DF Pen Tool Straight Source Image. You're going to place that, John, in there. That's these three little critters. And I want them to fit on my page. Again, you can smallify them. One thing that's crazy about Illustrator is, this is really weird, but you could literally make these little guys like that big on your page and still work with them pretty easily by zooming in, because remember, Illustrator is infinitely editable. So it can be misleading when you're working on a design project, because you can be working at this scale without knowing it. Like to the operator, this looks like a huge poster of a chicken head, and I could be drawn away on that and not realize that it's only 1/4 of an inch big, because my points scale up or scale down, or the other way around. But there's plenty of room on your 8.5 by 11 page to place both the straight and the curvy image. When you place things in Illustrator, you can distort them. I don't want my animals to look really like they've been flattened like a pan. We don't want them to be animals that have been run over on the road. So place them and keep them in proportion by holding down your shift key. If you drag the size, that will keep the drawing in proportion. And there's no indication on screen that you're keeping it in proportion, but you'll just know it, because if you try to make them real wide and fat or something, that won't happen. Okay, so straight edge animals are placed in there. Those animals are straight edge. Remember that straight edge movement? I don't know if that was before your time. People wore a big black X and they were like, I'm a punk rocker, but I don't do drugs. I'm straight edge. And then what could be more curvy and curly than a baby elephant? Sorry, that's my baby talking to voice. Especially works with my dog. And again, I'm going to just fit this little lovely creature in proportion. I don't want her to be out of proportion on screen. If I really wanted to, I could, because we don't really care. It's kind of fun to do this upside down or sideways. If you learned that in drawing class, if you're looking at a face upside down, or anything that you want to edit for accuracy, if you look at it upside down, it becomes a shape instead of like the associated actual thing, and it makes your drawings better. So if you really want to, you can put your elephant sideways. Woot! Okay, I'm going to move my elephant off screen for a moment just to talk about this straight. So I think you know what I want you to do. You're going to be tracing around these critters and using the straight pen tool. If you want to, if you open the layers window, layers, and you double click on that layer, it's going to give me some options. Remember how we made your sketch layer, and when you did the geometric logo, we made that a template? You can do that same thing. I mean, you can go over here and do the drop down in the hamburger lines, and it will give you the option. Or you could just double click on the layer, and it will say, you want to make it a template? And you're like, yes, I do. And you can even be like, I don't want to dim it down to 50%. I prefer 54% dimness. Check. Notice again that has become a locked layer and a dimmed layer, and we want to create a new layer on top of it for artwork. And also, if I want to make my guides a different color or something like that, I could do that. I can also automatically, lock it or whatever. But no, it's fine. So I'm making a new little artwork layer, and this helps me. What I'm going to do is, and you don't have to fill in these shapes. It's always helpful when you're drawing in the drawing phase of a project to just use a no-fill stroke. Like I said, sometimes a stroke with a bright color. I'm going to make mine hot pink so I can see what I'm doing on top of this little cow fellow. And like I said, you can do a lot of things as an Illustrator cheater by just straight line, click, 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 and then you know that you've connected your edges if your pen is free. If you do something you like, I don't know, there's a loud noise from outside, a rooster crows, an elephant goes by, an ambulance goes by, and you're like, oh gosh, and you do this. Actually, that closed it up for me, but we're working so tiny. If you're like, I thought I closed that corner from far away, you're like, aren't I closed? Wait, why is there a stringy thingy? It just zoom in there, and it is still open. That's why your pen tool is still dragging around a little line. You can just go ahead and close up the corner, and then to tidy up your line, you go back and delete that extra point that you made by mistake. And also notice when I zoom in here, if I was a perfectionista designer, which I know many of you are, like, that is not exactly on top of that corner. And also maybe you want to change, remember we talked before about how the stroke is positioned on the line segment underneath it. If you look at your strokes window, the Strokes, what a great band, you can align remember the line color and weight is just the clothing that's draped across the skeleton of the actual mathematical line segment. And right now I have my stroke is aligned so that the decoration is evenly distributed on either side of the actual line, and I can make it go to the inside or I can make it go to the outside. A lot of times when you're drawing, the thing you want is the inside, because you want to make sure that your outside, you want to pick the points. It's harder to see through to make sure that you're lining up your corners with your corners. So just make sure that you understand what I'm talking about when I talk about where the stroke is aligned. There's also other choices in here. If you're drawing things with straight lines, while we're at it, pen tool. If I wanted to just draw some oh no exclamation points outside of my cow, remember, if I want to just draw a straight line with a pen tool and not a shape, I go click, and then I hit return, and that frees up my pen. So here I've just made straight lines. If I want any of those lines to have a different end cap, I can make a curly end cap, a curvy round end cap. And again, that's just putting a round hat on the end of my stroke. Or I can make a square end cap that sticks out, that projects, or I can make this line end, the stroke end right where the line ends. I can also, if I want to join a couple of these guys together, like here in my cow picture, if I wanted that to be not a click on just this corner here. If I wanted this corner to have a little rounded shape on it instead of a square corner, I could select roundies, and you can see it's rounded some of those corner shapes. It's difficult with the aligned shape. Anyway, you can play with that if you want to. And sometimes if you don't understand, why are my shapes weird? Why is the end of my shape weird? It's because the stroke options have been altered somehow. I'm going to keep it a straight end cap, and I'm going to keep my stroke aligned. Oops, I have to get off of there. I'm going to go back to, straight end cap. I want the corner to be square. I want the stroke to align to the inside. Okay, theoretically that's what I should be on by default now. So you can just continue if you want to go to a different color when you're doing a different part of the cow. That's the other thing. If you have any dangling open-ended points, when you go to the next shape where it overlaps, it might want to join to the previous shape. So, you want the black part of the cow to be its own solid thing. but it lets you know that you're lining up with you're intersecting with another anchor point underneath it. Like, you could just make the pieces of the cow the color that the cow was. That would be nice. And I was a little afraid to go right on top of this corner of the horn, so I sort of like dodged it, but I can always move my, I guess that is where it is. So this is where it starts to get complicated again. Remember that whatever shape that you did last is on top, so my black outline is on top of that hot pink cow horn outline. I can still select the points, but if the point is right underneath my other point and I'm trying to select that corner, that's the other helpful thing about being able to redraw. You can like temporarily like yank things away if I need to get in there and fuss with the details. So to make this black shape go underneath, I would either have to go around that corner. I'm just thinking like a designer. I would just cross that edge and then place the black layer underneath, place the horn on top, and it would cover that up. I guess technically, to be precise, I would want to have a point there and move this little point here. Yeah, I would want to like draw it like that around. I was thinking like I was making an illustration. And then once you get everything done, you can, you know how to make a round eyeball with another little round eyeball inside of it. You can do that if you want. There's nothing about, you could try to make a perfectly round circle with the pen tool, which is not that hard to do. It requires a little discipline with the way that you do it. If you look at a circle that's made by Illustrator, perfect circle, you will notice that it's formed of 1, 2, 3, 4 positioned points. They're at the north, south, west, east. That's how it goes, north, south, east, west. Points, those are called the extrema points. They're on the extreme outside. So theoretically, if I made a pen tool shape, here's how I do it. I want my first, anchor point on P for pen tool. Okay, if I want my first line, I want my first curve to go up. And what I'm doing is just extending my, it's a little goofy, trying to extend my handles to the right amount. This is probably good practice. You should probably do this instead of just using the circle tool. And then here I continue to drag, even though I've connected. And then I can go back and alter that a little bit, make him a little more square. And you can see that if to get more and more symmetrical, if I wanted to look at all of the handles, I can click and with shift and reveal all of my handle points, right? Anyway, all of the handles should be the same length. They should always be perfectly perpendicular to create a round circle. Is that what he's saying? Is perpendicular? They should be at the exact north, south, east, and west points. It's much easier to do it by using the circle tool, but it's kind of a good test. If you're working on typography, this happens a lot. You're trying to make your O round and you get these wonky doodle shapes. It drives you crazy. And you have to like perfect them by making everything mathematically perfect. I'm doing this by eyeball. Anyway, endless tweakage could be happening to try to perfect my circle shape. I think this guy is not in the right place. For one thing, it was too high up. If I was really going to be doing this, if I was going to be, working for Jessica Hish as my boss, I would throw some rulers on there. This is a total digression. Maybe I'm getting in too deep. Where's my view? I want to show my rulers, and then I could drag a guide out here. Whoops, I want to show my guides. Where's my guides? Guides. Huh. Theoretically, I'm showing my guides. Oh, there he is. Okay. So drag my guides on there, and what I would do is, to make a perfect circle, it's within a perfect square. So if I have these guides on here, I don't know if you can see this even, but I can put my points on the centers of the squares of the square that I've created, and then I know that I'm making it symmetrical, and my sides are not even of my arms. Oh my god, you can make sure now my handles are perfectly up and down. It should be the same length. Oh, sweat. Anyway, it's getting there. Holy smokes. And the cow is just looking at you like, what? All right, after you do all of your straight edge animals, wherever they may be, if you want to, you can, rearrange all of those and drag them off somewhere. I'm going to unlock my template layer and select everything I just did, and I'm going to move that all up into the corner, including all my little marks and everything. Get rid of some of these guides if I wanted to, and bring in little Dumbo the Elephant. Now, you know what I'm going to ask you to do here too. So Dumbo is also on the template layer, dimmed, and what I want you to do, and there's no perfect solution to this. This is artwork, but we're going to make little baby elephant out of curvy lines. So select your pen tool, and I can't work in the locked template layer. I can work in the artwork layer. You can start anywhere and just practice clicking and dragging. And somehow when I do this now, I've got the knack, and I kind of know where my curve is going to end up as I go around. I'm just clicking and dragging at each place. I'm going to put a handle in there, even if it's not perfect, by clicking and dragging, so that I know that it's one less thing I have to do later if there's already built-in handles. And like there, the curve is a little too extreme, but I can come back and organize that later. And it depends on how detailed you want to be with his little ears and whatnot. And at the end, if you want to go back and fill this all in and make him a pink polka dotted elephant or whatever, you can. And I'm just going to make his whole head as one shape. If you really, wait, let me undo that. What I'd probably do if I was going to really make this an illustration is I would make this head shape. I always like to think of Illustrator as working with cut paper. So this is kind of one layer, as I would make his main part of his head and his ear and everything. Say I wanted this all to be the same color of gray, elephant color. And then I'd go back in and make a trunk shape on top of it. You could go in and edit all those little wrinkly wrinkles if you really wanted to. And it's funny, sometimes you stumble across some part of an organic item like an elephant and that is very straight, and you're like, oh, I see. But I don't know if I wanted to make him a cartoon character and his trunk was connected like that. So when I go to color him in, this part of him is, I would probably make I would make the ear a different shape and stuff too, if I was going to animate him or something. Come on, make this color a little bit paler pink. I don't know. Or maybe that's just all one shape. And you know what? You know how now. If you're like, you know what, this really should be one element, not two. What would you use? You'd use your Pathfinder. tool. You go into Pathfinder and you'd say, I'm just going to mush those two together. Now it's one shape. And for right now, I need to keep drawing. I need to see his eyes, so make it hollow again. I want to draw his eye. That's another shape in there. I'm going to use my pen tool for, so I'm going to drag his cute little eye. And I can use my pen tool to draw just curvy lines too. I don't have to, everything doesn't have to be connected to a shape. If I just want to make a stroke like that, remember I do click drag, and then I return. I'm gonna make this little smiley line on here, and I can just hit return, and now that's a loose shape, which is okay if it's just going to be a decorative line element. So have fun tracing Mr. Elephant. All I really care about is that you do the Illustrator trace. You don't have to spend hours and hours perfecting this into this beautiful animated Disney character. I just want to see that you can capture some of these weird round curves by controlling your pen. And remember, there's no such thing as a mistake in Illustrator. So for example, when I went in here, I kind of missed the edge of his ear there. I want to go back later and edit it. I can grab onto the point, I can grab onto the handle, I can hit Option and detach this handle from its neighbor, so I can make that a little more abrupt of a curve. Anywhere that I want to go over and edit, I can hit the direct selection tool A and just go in there and perfect my curves and angles. This is what you call tweaking your Illustrator points, also known as getting sucked into the infinite black hole of Illustrator twiddling. Have fun! Once you get done with this whole guy, then just save him as your name, Joe Schmo, tutorial or exercise 4, and upload. Make sure you save it once again as an Adobe Illustrator file so I can see all your points. Pretty straightforward. Save it and include linked files. Yeah, include the link files. Okay, if you want to, actually what I should do is have you package it. We talked about this before. It will make a whole little folder, the Joe Schmo Tutorial 4 folder. It will collect the linked files and it will keep them linked in there. So right now, what files do you have linked? You have the source files, the animals and the elephant. I don't really need those to grade it because I'm just grading whether you made curvy Illustrator points and straight Illustrator points or whatever. But it's good practice to package. All right, bye-bye, have fun, see you later.